Twisted Travelers Podcast, your weekly dose of theme park news and entertainment. And now, here to talk all things coasters, theme parks, and even more, here are your hosts, Jack Lathrop and Chris Jones.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to this week's episode of the Twisted Travelers Podcast. As always, I am Chris, and I am joined by Jack. Jack, how you doing?
We're doing pretty good. How about you?
Doing well. Ready to get into it. We got a fairly short news week, back to ride of the week, all the usual stuff, listener questions, and a special second half with Mike and EB from Coaster Radio.
Yeah, it's going to be a good show, but we got to start it off with some shout-outs to our patrons, Bryant, Graham, Grant, Jaden, Mark, Allison, Steven, Eric, and Mikhail. Y'all are the real MVPs because you make this possible. We wouldn't be able to do what we do without you, and we appreciate your support. There's stuff coming for y'all. Random mail is going to happen soon-ish. Bonus episodes are going to happen soon. Other stuff is going to happen. So it's a great time to join the Patreon. If you've been thinking about joining, you should join in right now. It's going to be a good finish to the year because we've been rather failing on it the rest of the year.
Link is in the description. Join the Patreon. Obviously, you don't have to, but we always appreciate it. You get some special stuff based on your tiers. And yeah. Some quick plugs.
I got one more shout out real quick.
Okay.
One more shout out. Allison and I are doing Nano. I'm going to keep her accountable. She's at 4,311 words as of right now. She's got to be at 50,000 by the end of the month. Allison, start writing. Okay.
Okay. Plugs. Instagram, you can follow us at Twisted_Travelers. Twitter, you can follow us at Twisted Traveler, but the R at the end is a 1. You can follow Jack on Twitter and Instagram at Thrilling Moment, and you can follow me on Instagram at Twisted Travelers Chris. So, let's get into some news, Jack.
Yeah, this first one's actually, it's hilarious because when I was out at Silverwood back in September, Bryant and I were having a conversation about this very thing. And that's Herschend is interested. They've made it known that they're interested in purchasing Silverwood from the Norton family, which the Norton families have responded saying, yeah, no chance it will ever happen. But it's an interesting turn of events because it shows that Herschend is still wanting to buy more parks. And then also, if there were a park on my radar, if I were Herschend, I wanted to buy a park, it would be Silverwood because the park is already perfect for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I haven't been, but from what you described, it sounded like it would be right up their alley. If it doesn't get sold, then that's cool too, because the family that runs it, it seems like they're doing fine. Just added Stunt Pilot. Looks like a good park. I think it would be a good acquisition for Herschend just based on what I've seen. But
RMC wouldn't exist without that park either.
That's true.
When we were out there, we're walking around. It's like, this feels like a Herschend park. Literally, it felt like a Herschend park. So it makes logical sense that they would want to purchase it, but I think they've made it clear they just don't want that happening. So
yeah, but yeah, I mean, of all the parks for them to potentially buy, Silverwood sounds like a good fit, but probably won't
also complete control of the market up there.
Well, that's true as well. Even though it's a tough market to get a ton from, it seems like just with how far away it is. I mean, you'll have your locals, but. Yeah.
It is in the middle of nowhere.
I know. Next, Alabama Adventure is teasing potential Timberliners. Most likely would be for Rampage, their CCI. I know you have thoughts.
Boo. I don't want the only thing that the best thing will be if they've bought they bought 2 Timberliner trains so they can run 2 trains on the ride. But even then, I would rather have just bought another PTC because that ride was designed to run PTCs. And I feel like the Timberliners are going to ruin aspects of it. Just the way they track is so much different than the way CCI intended for their rides to run. And I just don't know. So I would love to be proven wrong. Don't get me wrong. I would love to be proven wrong and see these trains make the ride better, but I just don't see that happening.
Yeah, I mean, I have not ridden Rampage yet, so I can't really have any sort of comparison point from PTCs running on that and Timberliners. But most rides that I've done that have Timberliners compared to PTCs, I prefer the PTCs. So I would probably guess I would be on that side, but give it a chance if they do go that route, I guess.
Oh yeah, I'll definitely, if this is what's happening. I didn't go down this year just due to lack of time, but if they do put Timberliners on, I'll go down there, probably do a lift walk, talk to the team down there, get some rides in, maybe strap some cameras to it. But I'm interested to see what that park's got in store because they're looking to expand.
Yeah, it definitely seems like it. They've teased additions 2 years in a row, added something new last year. So who knows? It's a ground up, I wish. But probably not.
Oh, they've got
Family
the terrain
would be
for it.
cool, but
they've got the room for it, and they've got the terrain to do something special if they want.
I mean, if the money permits as well. But I doubt it. Don't even get that idea in your mind, Thuzius. It's probably not happening.
Too late. You put it in mine.
Jeez, no. But yeah, Alabama Adventure teasing something again. They keep going. Next up, coming from one of the best parks in the world, Silver Dollar City has started moving some equipment around, some machinery to start construction on whatever they're building over there. Rumors are a replacement for Fire in the Hole. We'll see how true that is, and it would make sense with the location, Fireman's Landing. We'll see.
Yeah, there's been a strong rumor for a while now that Fire in the Hole at Silver Dollar City's reached the end of its service life, and it's not necessarily the ride that has, but it's the building. If you're familiar with Blazing Fury at Dollywood, the reason Blazing Fury no longer has its splashdown is because it was rotting the building out, and the ride was at potential to collapse. And so they were like, well, we'll get rid of that and redo the track and everything. And it's worked. The ride's going to be around for another 40 years at least. Silver Dollar City chose to keep the splashdown and maintain the ride as is, and apparently that's going to bite them in the butt. So that's the rumor, is that they're going to pretty much just build a replacement for the ride. We'll see, though. It will be sad if that is what's happening, though, because Fire in the Hole is a national treasure.
Yeah, but from what I understand is it's not going to be anything intended to be super new. At least it doesn't sound like. It sounds like it's going to be a straight up Fire in the Hole 2. Just it works now. So I don't think it would take away a lot, honestly.
Yeah, and the rumor is that they've got RMC to do the track, which makes sense because RMC's redone all of the track for Blazing Fury at Dollywood. Everything fits that this is just going to be them. We're moving it over to Fireman's Landing, so it fits the theme over there, and we can get rid of the building that has potential to hurt someone.
And future expansion plot opens up right there.
That, I was going to say that where that part of where that ride is, it kind of blocks off some of their land. But if they get rid of it,
Stall for a minute because I'm going to Google Earth.
He's going to Google Earth, people.
So I could be completely wrong, but
he has an idea. Just imagine they build Zadra there. Just no.
That's not what
it's gonna be. It's gonna be interesting to watch, though, to see what they end up doing with this. I'm definitely curious to watch the process. And the other thing I'm really interested is Fire in the Hole theme is weird. Let's get that out there right now. It's a weird theme. I would be interested to see if they if they move it to Fireman's Landing, which is looking like that's going to be the case. Does the theme change any to mirror more of the Blazing Fury storyline, or do they just straight up move the entire sets over and just be like, yeah, it's over here now?
I'm still looking.
So, how about those Braves last night, y'all? They choked. Because who puts a pitcher that hasn't pitched in the majors in months in to start Game 5 of the World Series? I'm not salty at all. Okay, he's figured it out, folks.
So, if y'all have been to Silver Dollar City, you kind of know that when you go to Outlaw Run, it's weird. It just kind of dead ends. Except for back around to Fireman's Landing, and even it's pretty weird.
It's still complicated.
Area, yes. If you were to just straight up gut Blazing Fury's or not Blazing Fury, Fire in the Hole's current building, that opens up completely basically another potential loop around to it. You'd have to build a bridge over the railroad, but it's a possibility.
Or put
You
a
build
railroad
something
crossing
in that spot and it just connects straight through.
Yep.
There you go. That I could very, very, very well see them doing that, because that would make that area of the park so much easier to get to and actually open. People would realize
Also,
Outlaw Run's there because it
could
like
eliminate
never
some
has a line around there.
bottlenecking.
What?
Would also eliminate some bottlenecking with
Yes.
that outlaw path.
So yeah, I just wanted to make sure I knew my location right, but yeah, that's what
I could definitely see that in the plan. So we'll keep an eye on this. I think this is a project we're both just interested to see what they do with.
It opens up a lot for the park in the future, and you know how much I love that place. So
don't just say you know much how you love it. We both love that park.
I love it more. Shut up.
This is true.
Yeah.
Although, I mean, you can see my love for Dollywood is fading because after 7 years of having a pass, I'm not renewing my pass. I know, the shocker.
That's all of them gasping. I already knew that. But yeah,
he's known about it for a couple days now. Here it is. Here it is. This is my last Dollywood pass for who knows how long.
Rest in peace. Rather go to Holiday World at this point. So
it's closer.
As long as Rod's closed, yeah.
It's closer, and Voyage exists,
and free soda.
And free
if you
soda
open Rod, then maybe that'll switch back. But
sure, yeah.
Well, for me, and
one last little thing. Ghost Town in the Sky. So for those of you not familiar with this, Ghost Town in the Sky is an old abandoned theme park in the Smoky Mountains on the North Carolina side. If you've ever driven the stretch between Knoxville and Charlotte, you've driven right past the exit for this thing. And it was a really cool thing. It was kind of Imagine Ghost Town at Knott's, but built up on a mountain. They had the Hopkins roller coaster, some attractions and everything. If you want to see kind of get to see the property, I think Mr. Beast did a hide and seek video on the property at one point. Then there's also some urban explorers who have snuck up there and climbed around. It's a really cool property, and if they can bring it back, I would be very excited. There's been tons of talks in the past about, can we bring Ghost Town back? Can we bring Ghost Town back? And stuff just kept falling through, and it's just not worked. But now Storyland Studios, which is a company run by Disney Imagineers, wants to come in and work on it. And so, a little bit off their resume, they've worked on Legoland, Universal's Hogwarts Express, this is what they do. So they know how to make attractions work and work well. And so to see this park maybe get a shot at life would be fantastic. So
yeah, I'd be interested. If it did reopen, I'd want to go just for the location itself. That would be special for a theme park. And also I'd be curious what attractions they would put in. I think it'd be cool if it came back. We've known about it for a while as far as it just being a place, and it was always a place that was interesting just for the location. If it got another chance, that'd be sick.
Yeah, and the opportunities, first, it'd be really cool if they did bring the Hopkins back, although it's probably beyond repair at this point. But to build a roller coaster up there, it would be, honestly, the best thing to compare it to would be like a Glenwood Caverns of the Smokies.
Yeah.
That's the type of setting they would have to build roller coasters in. So you could put, my wild fantasy dreams are imagine an Outlaw Run up on top of that mountain or something. But more realistically, you could see an RMC Raptor or maybe a Vekoma, something like that pop up there, which would be phenomenal. And like Chris said, the setting's going to make this park worth a visit no matter what.
Mm-hmm. I'd love to see it get another chance. We'll see if it happens. Only the future will tell.
Yeah. Another project we're going to be keeping an eye on because I'm very intrigued.
For sure. So, ride of the week. We are continuing our Morgan Hypers. And we've been working our way up. We're down to the best two, in our opinions, that we've done. Steel Eel at SeaWorld San Antonio and Phantom's Revenge at Kennywood. I have the wheel ready.
The question is, will the streak of going up the list continue?
Well, let's see. Dun 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 dun. Dun 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 dun. It will not. Phantom's Revenge.
Fanny. Ooh, you want to start? Or you want me to start?
I I think okay, I can start this time because you started last time. Phantom. Where do I begin though?
Something about your soul leaving your body and being ejected over Pittsburgh.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Yeah, I really like Phantom. It's definitely the best ride at Kennywood by a large margin. Um, it is an easy 9 out of 10 in my eyes. I think the first half doesn't do a ton, but it has so much like jank classic feel that it already adds a lot to it. The massive drop into the ravine is amazing. And then you got the big turnaround, and from there it's just ejector. Is it the most comfortable ejector in the world? Definitely not, which is why I won't give it a 10. But it's still fun. You just get sent flying. It's a short ride, but the moments it does have are absolutely insane. It's unlike anything else. It has so much character. I love the trains, just the pool noodle that doesn't even touch you. It's definitely one of the most intense airtime coasters out there. I can't give it a 10 just because the first half isn't perfect to me, even though it has that character, and also it's not the most comfortable ride at points. But man, is it amazing. The terrain use is fantastic. I absolutely love it. You will see it at the end of the year. I'll say that.
Yeah. So Pennsylvania has no business having 2 hypercoasters this good. Let's just start out with that. So this is one of those rides. I remember getting into coasters and you hear about Steel Phantom and Phantom's Revenge, and you watch a POV of Phantom's Revenge for the first time, and you look at it, and because everyone you know that's ridden it raves about it. They're like, oh my gosh, it's one of the best coasters ever built. It's insane. And you watch a POV and you're like, that's a top 10 coaster in the world. And they're like, yeah, it is. And I'm like, you're joking, right? And they're like, no. So, go on like that for however long I was an enthusiast before I rode it. Jump back to last summer. We'd been trying to make something happen where we were going to meet up. It fell through. I already had off work. My dad already had off work. So we were like, well, we're going to Pittsburgh to ride Phantom's Revenge and Steel Curtain. That last one didn't happen. But we get up there and we start doing some of the credits. And it's like, okay, we got to go do Phantom. Until we get to the station, we get in the back row. I really didn't know much about this ride. So the pool noodle comes down. I'm like, oh. And we start up that lift. And you get to the top of that lift. And you get yanked over and you start down. And it's like just classic twisting arrow drop. And it's, And you hit the straight track. Y'all know I love a good bit of straight track. And then up into the first hill. And it's, at this point, I'm like, I don't get it. And then you start down the ravine drop. And that's when it clicked. That's when I understood what people meant. Because I didn't touch my seat for all 230 feet of that drop. And when I hit the bottom, I blacked out. And then you go through those overbanks and you get pops of airtime in the turns. And then you hit those 3 or 4 hills at the end that actually try to violently fling you out of your seat and send you clear to the other side of the country. And you're ragdolling through them. You have no control over your body. And I remember hitting the brakes and being like, what the hell did this park create? And then running around and riding it like 5 more times because it's phenomenal. And that's literally, the ride is insane. There's no words for like, it shouldn't be as good as it is. On paper, it shouldn't be that good. Watching videos, it shouldn't be that good. Looking at pictures, it shouldn't be that good. But it just is. And it's so janky and amazing and awesome. It's definitely one of my favorite coasters. You will see it at the end of the year for me as well. And my bit of advice, if you really want to put your faith, like if you want to test your faith, crisscross applesauce that ride. Have fun.
I'm good.
It was terrifying. Scott was like, cross your legs and pull them up as close to the restraint as you can. I kid you not, I was laying down.
Yeah, I don't really get Pennsylvania because they've got this, they've got Skyrush, and they've got Phoenix. They really just want to kill you up there.
Don't forget Jackrabbit on the other side of the park.
Oh yeah, Jackrabbit's double down. That's specific.
Also,
yeah,
ride that with a very loose seatbelt, and you will trust a lot.
Yeah, I love Phantom.
Yeah,
I don't
it's a
love it quite
special
as much
ride.
as he does, I don't think, but I do really like it. Um, it's fantastic. I don't know what more I can
It's
say. It's
the
just really good.
one knock against it is it's short and it's way too far away from my house.
Yeah. It's great.
I don't even
You'll,
know where
like we
it's
said, you'll
ranked right
see it at
now.
the end. I do, I think. Wait, hold on.
I'm
We
gonna
don't need to
go.
share.
Um,
Save it. Oh,
it's
that's
ranked
higher than
there.
me, I think. Hold up.
Yeah,
Y'all don't get to know. Haha.
we're teasing the crap out of y'all.
What is it? What is it? What is it? What is it? Oh. Here. Yeah.
Oh,
So
it's pretty cool. Okay.
it's good.
Yeah,
If
it's
you need to
good.
see
It's
what numbers we
it,
were holding up, you'll know.
it is a good ride. It is a good ride. And if you
Very
get that
good.
joke, you get that joke. So, okay, jumping from Ride of the Week, we'll be back next week to talk about Steel Eel at San Antonio. But we're jumping into the halftime report and what's been a pretty interesting week in our fantasy league, I think.
Yeah. I'm pulling it up right now. What are the odds that I get an ad when I go to the matchups again?
I'm gonna give it a 1-1.
Okay, let's start off. First matchup, we got me versus Marcus. It's still going on right now, early in the first for the Monday night game, but it's looking like I'm gonna win it. Um, Tom Brady, it was a tough week, but he did good for fantasy. Aaron Jones, good week. Keenan Allen, good week. Cole Beasley, good week. It was a risk starting him, and it paid off. Well, he still had Cooper Kupp and Darrell Henderson and Austin Eckler.
Yeah.
But it was
Fournette had a down week.
yes, he did, and so did Cortland Sutton. But yeah, it was a close one. But right now, it looks like I've got it, unless Daniel Jones somehow goes crazy, and I still have Travis Kelce. So good for me. Good for me. I'll take it.
The Twisted Travelers remain undefeated against the Drunk Riders.
That's true. That's true. We got Bryant versus Allison. Let's take a look.
Yeah, this one's pretty much over. Allison walks away with the win here.
She had a down week for Kyler, Terry McLaurin, and Robert Tonyan, but Debo Samuel and Jonathan Taylor still doing their thing, while Bryant just had a down week in general.
Yeah,
Tough. Burrow did his thing, but Kamara, Diggs, CeeDee Lamb all were solid. Everyone else is a little bit down. Yeah.
Not great, yeah.
So Allison going to keep winning. Good for her, good for her. Then we have Ben versus Perry. That is your dad, right? That's the right Rockets team. We have two Rockets teams, people.
Yes, we do have two Rocket teams. Yes, that's my dad.
And this is a close one that's still going on right now.
Yeah, my dad's finished playing. He's at 112. Although my score just updated, and now he's got an even better chance of winning. Perry's team just does whatever it wants, I guess.
Pretty much. It looks like Ben's going to come away with the win, but it's early in the first, or not early. It's late in the first, and Tyreek Hill already has 16 points, so there's that chance. And he has his running backs still in. Perry does. But it's looking like Ben's got it. So good for Robert Woods, Adam Thielen, Najee Harris. All did solid.
Yep.
Okay. Next matchup is you, sir, versus Steven.
Yeah, I could have beat anyone this week.
Mm-hmm. Steven, tough one.
Yeah, good call on starting a Mixon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Herbert, Mixon, Gordon, Cooper. No one on my team had a bad week. Everyone had a good week.
Robinson, but he got hurt.
Except for Robinson. And even then, he could have just put up a 0 and it wouldn't matter.
Pretty much. Steven, Josh Allen did his thing. Everybody else had a tough week except for Damian Harris. Man, it's tough. It's rough out here. So Jack going to get his third win of the season. And then we have my dad versus Grant.
And even on your dad's worst week, he still wins.
That's right. He's got Mahomes still playing. Derrick Henry got hurt, but Elijah Mitchell had a good week. Chris Godwin had a great week. And then over on the other side, Grant Tannehill played well, but everybody else just did not pull through. So tough. But yeah, still going strong for me. Jack's starting to come back a little bit. It's looking good, looking good.
That was week 8 of 14, so we're over the halfway point at this juncture.
That's right.
I think it's gonna be an uphill battle if I want to get back from my really bad starts. So
just don't want to be last, and I don't think that's gonna happen for me. So yeah, I'm feeling good.
Yeah. So we'll be back next week with more fantasy.
That's right. Okay. Last couple things before we get into the interview. We have 2 listener questions that were specifically for us, and then we have more later on for Mike and EB. So first, from Brandon, what coaster after becoming an enthusiast scared or scares you the most?
Do you have one?
I do. The only 3 rides to make me nervous after becoming an enthusiast. I wouldn't say scared, but nervous. First time on Dragster, a little nerve-wracking. First time on I-305, just because I did not know what was about to happen. And first time on X2, or only time on X2, actually. A little nervous still, just because I had no idea what that was going to be like. But yeah, those are my 3.
Yeah, I really only have one since I became an enthusiast, and it's again, like, I just remember going up the lift hill of this ride. It's like, this is the first time since riding Eagle I've been scared of anything, and it's X2. So I said I'd shout it out if one of you guessed it, and Brandon, you guessed it. It's X2. Klaus, you also said you were going to guess it, but Brandon got it first. So yeah, just going up that lift hill backwards for the first time. If you don't get butterflies in your stomach, I have questions for you. So It's X2 for me, definitely.
Okay, and our last question for just us. Ugliest park you have been to, from Bryant. The negativity this week, sir. Wow.
He's just been, like, rude.
I'm having to look at my list. We're just kidding with you, Bryant. You haven't been rude. What would I consider the ugliest park I've been to? I don't know if I've been to an ugly park, really.
I was going to say, I don't know if I've been to a park that I would call ugly.
I will say, okay, I'll just point out some of the least pretty. How about we go with that?
That works.
I will say, no, I can't say that about that park either. Kentucky Kingdom.
Okay, that's fair.
Kentucky Kingdom is not pretty. I was going to say Six Flags St. Louis, but then I realized that backdrop is pretty cool. It just had parts that were not the best.
Kentucky Kingdom's a legit answer, because that's one of my favorite things about Herschend having bought them out, is I'm hoping they're going to Herschendify that park, as I like to say, and make it really pretty. Because it's got a great ride collection, but you can't help but feel like you're at a really, really rundown Six Flags park. Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm copping out with this one. Santa Monica Pier, West Coast Coaster. That place.
I mean, you have the Pacific Ocean as a backdrop. It's kind of hard to say that's not pretty, but
it's a big, vast void of nothingness. Also, I went on a really crappy day, so
I can't say that that's ugly just because of the location.
Yeah, fair enough.
The Fun Spot parks I wouldn't consider pretty, but what do you expect? I feel bad saying this because I really do like the park compared to most people. With Six Flags America definitely had spots that weren't pretty, but it also had spots that I thought were really well done. So,
but it was very hit or miss. That was another one I was gonna say. Michigan's Adventure. Sorry, it's not the prettiest park.
Hold on a second. Okay, yeah, that's a good one, because I'm looking at my spreadsheet of parks I've been to, and I completely forgot to even put Michigan's Adventure on here. So yeah, that's the one thing I'll say. Michigan's Adventure definitely ain't pretty.
Rip.
Adding it now.
Yeah, I think with that we can safely end that segment, because I don't think it gets any better than that. So with that, we're gonna jump on into our interview with Mike and EB from Coaster Radio.
All right, so we are here with our guest Mike and EB from Coaster Radio. So, do you guys want to go ahead and introduce yourselves? Let the people know a little bit about what you do, what your podcast is about, how long you've been doing it, all the usual stuff.
All the usual stuff. Sure. No, we are we like to call ourselves, Mike, the Original Theme Park Podcast. This is EB. We've been doing this now. This is our 16th year of CoasterRadio.com. We like to talk about how we were a podcast before podcasts existed, before YouTube existed, all the way back in 2005. So we've been doing this for a long time, and we're happy to be on y'all's podcast because this is one of the many podcasts, Mike, that we've inspired, I feel like.
Oh, that's cool.
Or we can claim that, I think, right?
Yeah, no, 100%. You inspired me to want to do a podcast, and I dragged Chris along for the ride.
I don't know how I ended up here.
That's how we feel some weeks too. We're like, how did we get here? Like, because when we started Coaster Radio back in 2005, we thought it was going to last for a couple months, maybe like one summer season.
Mm-hmm.
That would be it. And so I think we're shocked that we're still doing it, this many years later.
Gotcha.
So, and I know both of you have backgrounds actually in production in TV and radio.
Mm-hmm.
So I got to ask, like, what's it like doing that every day and then getting to do that with Coaster Radio?
Ooh, I think this is the fun version of what we've do in our day jobs, right, Mike? Where, we have to do our day jobs and we have to do what, somebody else tells us to do. But CoasterRadio.com is our own product. It's our own show. And Mike, this is your vision from way back in the day when we first started doing this. We all worked together in the same little public television station. And then when that sort of all fell apart, we went our separate ways. Mike had the idea of, guys, there's this thing called podcasting. We're like, what? It's like, it's like internet radio. We could all get together and still do something creative.
Yeah.
And it's called a podcast. And that's where CoasterRadio.com came from.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I'm one of those people, I think, just like EB and maybe like you guys, who have always loved the idea of like being on the radio, but it's kind of hard, right? Like, it's not the easiest of jobs. Like, if you know anything about like people who are on the radio, it's like you're always moving from city to city and it's really hard to have like steady employment. So if you want to have a family or something, it's not the greatest job for that. But being on the radio is so fun. Like, ever since I was a kid, like there were radio shows that we'd listen to and just, I'd be like, oh my God, I want to do that so badly. But then the other thing that I also loved at the same time were theme parks. Like, ever since I was like 3 or 4 years old, like it was just something that I loved. So there was this idea in my head, like in 1999, I remember sitting and thinking, like, is there a way to do a radio show about theme parks? That would be so awesome. Like, but where do you do that? There's no place on earth. Like, you can't go to your local radio station and say, I'm here to do a show about theme parks. Like, nobody would have had that. And EB's right. Then one day there was this article about this new thing called podcasting. And we decided to give it a try. And I think when we started our show, I literally think there were like 400 podcasts out there. Like that's all there were. We were like right in that area of starting. So there weren't many and nobody really knew what a podcast was. And when we started, like, going to the parks and stuff, we had to explain to them what it was. And they were like, I don't even know what you're talking about. What is that? But yeah, man, here it is 16 years later. And it just, it's so different, like everything is different about it.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So kind of,
there are hundreds of thousands of podcasts now. That's what's just nuts.
Oh yeah. Like,
and I feel like I email a park about something and they're like, oh, here comes another podcast.
Another podcast. Sure, exactly.
Yeah. That's the hard part, man. Yeah, because now there's so many. And, like there are hundreds of Disney podcasts about Disney parks. There are hundreds of Universal ones. And now there are more and more like what we all do, just kind of talking about theme parks in general, which is great. Those are my favorite type of podcasts. Mm-hmm. Those are the ones I listen to.
For sure. I'm more on the general theme park side than the Disney side for a variety of reasons, I will say. But kind of continuing with the origin of Coaster Radio, we have a specific question from a fan, Bryant. He says, how often do you talk with the other three Joint Chiefs these days? And what's been their overall reaction to the fact that you're still doing this 16 years later?
Oh,
That's a good one. No, it's unbelievable. I think for sure that they started back in the day with us because it was that sort of thing where we just wanted to get back together and still do something creative, Mike. But
Yeah.
it did kind of start to fall apart at some point, and we were sort of like, okay, we've done this. We've kind of taken it to where it can kind of find its own conclusion. After just a few years, we didn't think it would be able to carry on at some point, but then we revived it. So it's just me and Mike now.
Yeah, and we still talk to the guys. One of them is my brother, so I see him all the time. And he actually joined us at Silver Dollar City for our meetup there, and got on stage and said hello to everybody. And but Mario and Flava still around, still talking to them, and they still listen occasionally. They kind of check in because I'll get a text from them saying, "Hey, I heard what you guys did. That this was funny." So I think they're shocked that it's still going on. But they love it. They love it, and still give ideas and stuff like that, which is fun.
Yeah, it's been. I mean, I remember listening to those episodes, and they were something else. Just what would go down in those episodes, and then when you brought the two-host format in, because I think I discovered the show right around the Carowinds meetup, and then my dad and I immediately jumped in and started at the beginning and listened our way all the way through to the present. And I just remember like watching the change over time. And it's like you said, when you started, there were maybe 400 or 500 podcasts total in the world.
Yeah.
So what's it been like to watch this shift over the last 16 years from, like, I think you all recorded on CD, straight to CD in the beginning, to where we are now doing this like fully online.
Well, that's the interesting thing, isn't it? Especially if you go back and listen from the very beginning of coasterradio.com, it really was Mike saying, "Hey guys, let's get back together and have some fun. We'll meet at my house. Come to the living room. I've got this equipment. I've got some microphones, and we can lay them out in my living room." And we just went over to Mike's house and sat around and had fun and talked about stuff. But now, it is just regular podcasting stuff. Like right now we're on, we're all online. We're all in remote locations.
Yep.
That wasn't even something possible back when coasterradio.com started, when we were all physically in the same room together. So we've seen the evolution of podcasting and the internet through coasterradio.com over the years.
Yeah. Yeah. Because when we started, you mentioned it, we were recording to a CD recorder.
Yep.
And it was something that my wife had from her school. Like, we couldn't even afford something like that, but she had it. And it was at the house. So I was like, I'm going to use that, because like digital recorders were way too expensive and a computer wasn't fast enough to keep up with what we were doing. So, and we didn't want to record on like cassette tape or like digital tape or something like that. So yeah, man, we recorded on CD and, edited on like a program called Gold Wave, which is like so old.
Yes.
Old school. One of the first like digital audio software things. And, but now, man, it's so great because, through things like Zencaster and Zoom, you can bring in guests and do all types of things and not have to rely on a phone. Like, when we first started, we used a phone hybrid type thing that would actually bring in phone calls, and it was really horrible quality. But, now a lot of these people that you interview like have great microphones, and the sound quality can be so much better. And
well, now, especially, with COVID and everything, everybody has to build their own home setup. So people are a lot more used to it. But I do absolutely remember back in the day, I would tell Mike, "You have to burn me a CD so I can listen to the show back." And I had, this is going, Gen X folks can think back. We had the CD wallets in our cars, right? The black zippered case of CDs that you would have to listen to in your car. I had one of those that was just dedicated to coasterradio.com, of the CDRs that I would put into the CD wallet. But all of that's past now. Especially now, post-COVID again, everybody knows how to do video conferencing. Everybody knows how to set their laptop up to do, an audio recording with other people remotely. So podcasting, I think in the last 2 years, has taken huge leaps and bounds. I mean, we've been doing it for 16 years, but I think the last 2 years has been huge for podcasts.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Especially as it gets more into the mainstream.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's kind of fun. Like, I don't know if you guys notice this too, but like the audience kind of changes a little bit as more people in the mainstream get into podcasting. You have a lot of people who aren't just like hardcore enthusiasts. You get people who are just kind of like, "Hey, I like theme parks. Let me see what this show's about." So that's kind of fun too. Just new audiences showing up.
Mm-hmm.
And that's way different than it was when we first started. When we first started, it was only like hardcore people who were going to roller coaster message boards. And those are the people who were finding us. And that was a little hard at the beginning, actually, because it was an audience that was hard to please. For sure.
That actually kind of transitions into my next question, nice, which is characters, which is something y'all have become known for. And my favorite character is the original is Coaster Boy.
You got to give a little Coaster Boy. Little Coaster Boy's got to show up.
The Coaster Boy's got to show up. Fine, whatever. I guess you guys. Coaster Boy really came out of those early days because Mike said, people said, coaster posers, what are they doing? They have no idea what they're doing. But coasterradio.com, I guess they've come to their own. Whatever. Okay, fine.
Yeah, Coaster Boy was actually based on a real guy.
Yeah,
who was not happy with our show and went on the Coaster Buzz forum to talk about it, and we were so offended by what he was saying. But EB took that anger and turned it into comedy, and that's where Coaster Boy came from. Yeah,
and it's just hilarious because those characters they've turned into their own story arcs. Coaster Boy, Hagrid is and then my dad and I are diehard C-Pain fans.
Oh yes, yeah.
Me too. And it's hard to drag that out of Mike sometimes, I feel like.
Yeah, I feel like times have changed, and so if you go back and listen to the C-Pain stuff from early on, like it's funny, but I don't know if it would work today as much as it did like that. And that's what's hilarious is that we've done so many shows that there's a thing you could be like, well, it worked back then, which
right. No, yeah, we've been around for long enough now that it's like 10 years ago what was okay and acceptable or even like was like towing the line is totally not cool anymore.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So now I'm almost afraid to like,
Well, at least we weren't doing a podcast back in the 90s because that would be even worse, right? Can you imagine the horrible, offensive characters that we would have from back in the 90s?
Yeah, so bad. So, but I love C-Pain too because I love just the goofiness of auto-tuning your voice and just singing dumb lyrics. Like there was a time with C-Pain we used to do it live. Like the best C-Pain songs were produced. But do you remember EB? We used to actually like play a beat and just like I would riff with the auto tune, and it was horrible. But
well, and I feel like that the show's been around long enough that people don't even know that C-Pain is a reference to an actual musical person T-Pain who did the auto tune. Like that's where auto tune started was back with T-Pain, and then it was a joke that C-Pain would come on and sing about roller coasters.
Yeah. So yeah, so like you mentioned that some people love the characters. The flip side is there's so many listeners who hate the characters too.
Oh yeah,
and C-Pain in particular, because I don't think they get what's going on. And like one time somebody wrote in and they're like, "Mike, you suck. You think you're so funny, or what? You write such great songs, but you're not a musician." And I'm like, no, of course I'm not a musician. That's not the point. Like
that's the joke. That's part of it.
It's a joke. Yeah, it's but yeah, it's funny how the joke sometimes flies over some people's head.
Mm-hmm.
But that's it's good.
Okay, so moving on. Let's talk about the NPH project. What's up with this? I'm curious because this is something that I'm not familiar with as somebody who hasn't listened to every single episode. Jack added this in. I need some explanation.
This is one of my favorite story arcs of the entirety of your all show. I'm in the middle of rewatching How I Met Your Mother right now, so this is perfect timing.
Yeah.
It's a hard one to explain, and I'm sure Mike deals with this also as much as I do, where people find out about the podcast or they find out about what Coaster Radio is, and NPH invariably comes up in that, and it's like walking down the hall, it's like, "Hey, I found out about your podcast. You got like this NPH thing going on?" It's like, okay, I got like 30 seconds to explain this story, and there's not enough time to actually do it. And so trying to explain the story of what happened is actually kind of difficult in a short amount of time. And it usually ends up with something like, well, we were joking about how we should have a celebrity on the show. And so we started talking to, about who likes roller coasters. Well, David Arquette likes roller coasters. So we started like stalking him, but not really stalking him. It was more of like we were doing jokes and things with the listeners, and we sent him a basket of treats, and we were trying to do like Photoshop contests, but he never actually responded to it. But we knew that he knew that we were talking about him because we were tagging him on Twitter. And so finally, a whole year later, we gave up and we announced on the show that we were giving up on David Arquette. And instead, we were going to try to get in touch with Neil Patrick Harris because we know Neil Patrick Harris likes theme parks and roller coasters. Mm-hmm. And then that same week that we said that on the podcast, we get an email saying, "What makes you think I'm not already a listener of your podcast?" And our minds were just blown. And so that started the Neil Patrick Harris project, where we were stalking Neil Patrick Harris and we were trying to get his attention with the same things, where we sent him gifts and we had the listeners do Photoshop contests. And the whole goal of it was to get NPH on the podcast and become the announcer of the show. And he finally did, ultimately a year later.
Yeah. And you know what's funny about that is like all of that started with like David Arquette and then Neil Patrick Harris, like us just trying to figure out like what do we put on this podcast like during the off season? Like, you know, when the parks are closed, what do we talk about? And so we said, well, it'd be kind of fun to stalk a celebrity and send them things, like the goofiness of sending them a big tower of candy and treats and stuff, you know, like would they get that? Would they write back? And you know, it was funny how it actually worked. You know, it actually worked, especially with Neil being a listener already, which was shocking to us at first.
We wooed him. We totally wooed him, right? Like at Christmas time, we had the listeners send Christmas greetings to Neil Patrick Harris and his family and record videos. And we compiled them together and sent them to him as a Christmas gift. So there were all sorts of weird, wacky things that we were doing kind of during those. It was 2 years ultimately, with the first year trying to get David Arquette's attention, and then the next year getting NPH's attention. And in the end, it worked out. It worked out. I think that we culminated the thing with the Neil Patrick Harris. We raised money for a favorite charity of his, somewhat successfully, but it worked out in the end, and we became best pals.
Is that where that certain episode that I'm remembering happened? Was that in there somewhere?
Is this the angry episode?
Yes.
Oh yes, yeah. We sort of flipped out, right? Yeah.
I remember we were driving through Virginia and all of a sudden that episode came on and my dad and I were like, oh boy.
Yeah.
Well, it was a project 2 years in the making, right? Where we were trying to get the attention of David Arquette. It didn't work. We're trying to get the attention of Neil Patrick Harris. It wasn't quite, you know, we were playing it up like it wasn't working. And we decided we were going to raise money for this project, the Neil Patrick Harris project, for his favorite charity. Project Angel Food.
Yep.
Right, which serves meals to folks that are in need, and we wanted to raise $5,000 through the podcast. We knew we could do it. We had enough listeners to be able to do it and chip in. We had a couple of different campaigns and different ideas of ways that people could, you know, donate money, but for whatever reason, it just wasn't happening. And so we were like, guys, we've been working on this for so long. Why aren't you coming through on this? We have to get this to happen. We're finally here at the end. This is supposed to be the finale of this gigantic thing. Yep. And then it worked out in the end, Mike. You know, we did get NPH. We did donate the goal finally, ultimately. And NPH did come on the podcast, and he has been our announcer for 10 years. At this point, NPH has been a close personal friend of CoasterRadio.com.
Yeah, and it's been cool because the nicest thing that he does is like, well, a little behind the scenes action is we're totally never wanting to bother him, so we never ask him for things except like every now and then we're like, hey, will you judge our real design contest or a ride design contest? And he's always like, oh, of course I will. But a lot of times he's really cool, and like when he's at Epcot. Being the narrator for the Candlelight Processional, he'll call from backstage like 5 minutes before he's supposed to go on and leave a message and say, hey, here's what I did today, and here's how the magic bands work. And just kind of really nice to do that. Like, it's not something that we ask for, just kind of like he's like, hey, here's how I can be a part of the show when it makes sense. And that's always been really cool that he does that, and just like has been in touch over that time, which is really great.
Yeah, and then I think, the one part that hasn't, I mean, it's gotten brought up, but it hasn't. In the end, you also got to go be extras on How I Met Your Mother.
Yeah.
That was kind of the thank you, I feel like. So, yeah, we the end of the Neil Patrick Harris project was us, the goal was to get him on the podcast, to talk to him, but then also have him be the announcer for coasterradio.com, right? That was what we always wanted, was we should have a celebrity announcer introduce the show. And so he came on and he recorded that for us, but then we also talked to him, for a full episode. He came on and did a live interview, and we joked about how, oh, it's so great you've been on our show, we should be on your show sometime. And he was like, haha, sure guys, anytime you're in California, come on out, you can be on my show. Ha ha ha. Okay, bye, we'll talk to you later. And Mike and I were like, we should totally call him out and make sure that he lets us do that. Send him an email. And so we did.
Yeah. And what was so nice, he's like, all right, tell me, like, I will hear the times where we are shooting.
Yep.
If you can make it at one of those, let me know and we'll set it up. And I think EB, like, you and I, like, bought tickets that day. Like, right away, we were like, we're going.
Yeah, he was like, here's when you guys can come out. And we were like, okay, we're going to come. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, so it was really, really cool. And so we actually made that into like a long weekend and went out there and went to Disneyland on the first day. And then the second day went to the Fox Studios. And it was a really kind of bizarre experience because we actually had like a pass to drive onto the lot. And it looks just like it does in like the movies and stuff. You're driving onto this lot with all these sound stages. And there's a New York set over there, and there's some other big set over there, and it's kind of like freaky. We're like driving on to that area because, like, what did they call it, EB? There, like, you have a drive-on pass.
Yes.
Totally, like, really nice.
Yeah. It's just like if you've ever watched like Animaniacs or seen Pee-wee's Big Adventure, where they're on the studio lot. That's exactly what it was. And we were there, and we were like in Wayne's World when they're flashing the pass, right? It's like special guest of NPH, and we walked right into the studio. And we had chairs set out for us, and we got to go and sit in the primo location to be the extras that were on camera the most. It was so fantastic.
Yeah, it was so nice because they sort of set us up in the area where the director sits. And so we were sitting like in a row behind the director, watching her like work with the actors, and she has like 5 monitors that have each of the cameras up there, and so she's watching all those. And Neil came over, and what was really nice about Neil, he was introducing us to everybody, like, oh, hey, here's the director, this is Mike and EB, and they do this show and they do all these characters. And it was kind of funny to hear him like talking about the show.
Right. As much as we try to explain our relationship to NPH, it was funny to see him explaining his relationship to us, to his peers. Like, well, there's like this podcast and it's about theme parks and roller coasters. It's actually cool, guys.
Exactly.
And I have to imagine how funny it had to be to watch him go from that to being Barney, just when they call, and because Barney is one of the funniest characters ever, but he's definitely slightly different than Neil and the way he acts.
Oh, yeah. And I remember sitting in the like right behind the director and watching him do a take, and he did something that was funny that I laughed out loud. Like sitting in that thing, and everybody kind of looked over and was like, "Oh shoot, that's not what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to be quiet." And but yeah, that was so fun. And then of course, like to actually be extras in a couple of scenes, which was awesome, but also terrifying. It was so scary because they kind of threw us into the deep end of the pool without telling us how to do it or what to do. They kind of like sat us down there in the middle of right behind that famous bench. Where the main characters sit, and said action, and then there's me and EB trying to figure out what to do. So it was pretty wild.
Man, that's crazy. I think that's one thing that y'all have done that I don't see any other podcast doing, is actually befriending a like top celebrity, getting them on the show. I don't know of anybody else who's done that in the theme park community. That's impressive. It's genuinely impressive.
And it was like one of those things that just was such a stroke of luck that it all happened the way it did, and one of those things that, we couldn't even plan, because we were thinking that the celebrity thing probably wouldn't work. Like,
it was just silly,
thing,
right?
Just dumb, and like, it'd be funny if David Arquette sent something saying, leave me alone, then
that would have been funny enough.
But yeah, just to have it, turn out the way it did is so great.
Yeah.
I imagine reading a cease and desist on the podcast would have been anything.
That would have been so funny, though. Oh yeah.
Well, I mean, I would be remiss if I didn't sneak it in. It had to be a legend. Wait for it, Derry.
Yep, it was.
Yeah, it's just such a fun moment. And I think for me and EB working in TV and stuff, it was a great experience from that perspective too. Just seeing how it's done, on that level was something I've always remember. It was so great.
Awesome. Let's see. Well, we've talked a lot about the origins of Coaster Radio. We've talked about some characters and Neil Patrick Harris. The next thing I want to know, because again, y'all have been doing this a lot longer than most of us. What's it been like watching this thing grow and then getting to like host meetups and do stuff like that over time?
It's been like, to me, like, I think the favorite thing I've ever done, because I've gotten to do a lot of really like interesting things in TV and radio, but the thing that I love most about Coaster Radio is that, here we are, EB's in Indiana, and I'm right outside of Washington, D.C. in Northern Virginia. We do this show essentially like in our home studios in our basements, so it's not like we're in some fancy studio with satellites and stuff. We're just, this is like a homemade, homegrown podcast. But I love that what we do, just here gets heard by people all over the world. That to me is shocking and amazing. And that's what's so awesome about podcasting is that, here we are talking about Cedar Point on a show, and there's some guy in China listening, and there's somebody listening in London on the tube, and somebody in France, and then somebody in Anaheim. They're walking down. Somebody said, "Hey, I was walking down Main Street. I had my earphones on, and I'm listening to your show." That's so cool, and it's something like even beyond what I thought I could do as a kid. Like being on the radio, you're in one city, right? You're not going to be heard all across the world. But that's what I love is that this thing that we're doing is so accessible by anybody around. And the thing that I love most, it's like something that we're passionate about, theme parks, but anybody who's listening is also passionate about it. So we all have this thing in common. And I think that's what's so great about it.
Well, and it's always been a tenet of coasterradio.com that we're interactive. We always want to be able to connect with the listeners. So we've always tried to have, we do listener questions where we ask the listeners to participate. We'll do a whole episode, where we ask a question and the listeners give us their responses, and we read those on the air and we comment on them and things like that. We have games that we do where we have game shows where we have live listeners calling in, or we do the live recording of the podcast where listeners can interact with the podcast. But that's what's kept us going. And I think that's where the meetups came from, is we want to continue to connect with these listeners, like Mike said, around the country and around the world. And at some point we were like, well, how do we keep this going? How do we keep the energy up? Well, let's actually meet face to face. And we started doing the events. At this point, 7-8 years ago, I think we've been doing the events, where it was, hey guys, you're listeners to the podcast. We're listeners to the podcast. We should all get together sometime and we should hang out because we all like the same thing. So let's go to Cedar Point. And we picked a date and we all showed up and people did show up. And then we've been doing it ever since. COVID times kind of knocked things out. We're trying to get back to it again, but we have been doing meetups with dozens and dozens of listeners from around the country and around the world that have been flying out overseas. And it just continues that interactivity and that connection with the audience that we've always been looking for.
Yeah. And the meetups were EB's idea. And when he first brought them up, I was terrified to do it for a number of reasons. But the biggest reason I was scared to do it is because I remember we did a show at Holiday World, like the year after the voyage opened. And they put us up at this like folding table outside of the station. And we were standing there. And these guys walked up, like we hadn't even announced. I guess we announced that we were going to be there. And so we said, hey, if any listeners want to show up, we're going to be outside the voyage at 3:00. And so these guys walked up and they got to the table where we were and they saw that it was us. And they just had this look of disappointment. Like I could see it in their eyes. I could see it in their face. They were like, oh, this is it, huh? This is okay. Like,
this is what you guys are. Okay, I get it.
They look bummed out. And I remember seeing that look of disappointment in their eyes. And I thought, like, oh my God, we do this at a meetup and 100 or 150 people show up, and what if they all have that same?
They're gonna get in a line and just in turn give us the same reaction one after another. But to be fair, that was back in 2006, right? Is when Voyage opened. So theme park, I mean, podcasts were still brand new and people did not quite know what it was supposed to be. And so when it was just two dudes with a handheld recorder and a folding table, it seems okay that they might be disappointed in that. But when we did the actual first meetup at Cedar Point, I mean, that was almost 10 years later at that point. And it was so much fun because it really was sort of that we had more of an attitude of a ragtag band of enthusiasts that were just going to show up, right? Where we really were, all right, come find EB's car in the parking lot. He's going to fly a flag off his bumper. And then we're going to grill out in the parking lot like a tailgate party. And people showed up for that. It was just wild.
I was shocked because I was like, how, are we going to get like two dudes showing up like, hey, I'm here for my food. Where is it?
No, we had like 60, 70 people show up and the cops who were like, you can't tailgate in the parking lot of Cedar Point.
Yeah, that's right. The Cedar Point. Was it the Cedar Point police or the Sandusky police?
They have their own police, right? That's been controversial this past year. We've been finding out they have their own police. So it was their own police came out and told us what to do. And we were like, no, wait a minute. Cedar Point said we could be here. And it was like, we don't have any record of that.
Yeah, that's right. Because the internal Cedar Point people said, hey, yeah, go ahead, grill out, do whatever you want. But yeah, man, the cops came and almost shut it down, but that's all right. They were cool when they figured out what was going on.
Well, we had our international listener, didn't we? We had our friendly English guy who talked to the lady cop, and he was like, hello, I'm here from England, and I'm here from the coasterradio.com podcast listener meetup. Let me just talk to you for a moment, and we'll smooth things over.
And she had a big smile as she was talking to him.
Yeah, but we kind of shut things down, and then later on we did grill out at the picnic pavilion for lunch, and so it did actually happen with the cookout and the whole thing. So it worked out in the end. But the listener meetups have been so much fun. It really is in the spirit of coasterradio.com, where it is supposed to just be a gathering of enthusiasts of all levels, right? Like the most hardcore coaster boys all the way down to the new fans can get together and just have a good time without too much judgment. That's what Coaster Radio is supposed to be about.
Got you. So talking more about some things that you have done with fans, and it got brought up earlier, the Real Design Contest. Let's talk about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, we've done games. We've always done games and contests. That's always been something we've enjoyed. This is going back to the old days of, like Mike was talking about, wanting to be radio DJs, back in the old radio show days where you would have contests on the radio. We wanted to have a contest of some sort where people would submit roller coaster designs. What was it? It was the Emmys or the Oscars, right?
Oh yeah, it was right around the, because
that's where it came from originally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And like trying to come up with, okay, we would look at, okay, February's got Valentine's Day, so we've got to come up with content.
Oh, this was another off-topic thing where it was like an off-season thing where it's like, what are you supposed to talk about with theme parks and roller coasters in February?
Exactly. So then the Oscars came up and we're like, well, what if we do a contest where people design rides around movies? That could be fun. And that's kind of where it started from. And again, we had no idea what was going to start being sent in, but this is where where you realize there's so many creative people out there and people in our audience just are so into theme parks that some people already had created rides in their minds or even on paper. Remember that one guy, EB, had a whole prospectus that he had been sending to the parks, and he's like, hey, I want to enter the contest, but I need you guys to sign a non-disclosure agreement.
Because I've actually been working on this for years, but I want to enter it into the contest anyway to get attention to it. So yeah, it's been fantastic. The Real Design Contest where we've done it a few times now over the years, and the submissions are just incredible. And I feel like it's gotten a reputation because we actually have a really, really impressive panel of judges. It's not just they submit these things and it's like, hey guys, look, it's this Swamp Thing ride, and me and Mike are like, okay, that's cool. We have real theme park designers, Imagineers, park presidents, folks from the ride companies as the judging panel. Neil Patrick Harris was a judge on every single Real Design Contest, and they look at these rides and give their feedback And so it's a really, really cool contest. And Mike, maybe we should do that again this year. It's been a couple of years now.
Yeah. It is a lot of fun, and that's exactly the thing that I love most is hearing from the professional ride designers who have created things that we've all ridden, and so here they are taking a look, and they never just give like a quick answer. It's never like I like ride B. That's great, fantastic. There's the winner. They go through and give detailed accounts of like what they liked and what they don't like and why they were voting for one. So that's a cool thing. And again, something that you can do on a podcast that you might not be able to do somewhere else. It like really works well on a podcast, I think.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a cool idea. And another favorite story that's come out of that is EB's idea that he always pitched, and then a park kind of built it.
Yes. EB.
We've had a couple of these. We've had a couple of these. So one of the winners of the Real Design Contest, let's go back through the winners here, was the glass bottom boat of the Swamp Thing attraction.
Oh yeah.
Or the Creature from the Black Lagoon.
Yes, that's it. Yep.
And Universal's building it.
Yeah, supposedly, right? That's the rumor.
Right. This is something that's supposed to be coming from Universal. This was a winner of the Real Design Contest. So, but then before that, I had the idea as an example for the Real Design Contest of building a drop ride that went down into a shaft. So you would board a drop ride at the top, but it would drop you underground. And that was so many years ago. But then Glenwood Caverns, they built it.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of things that with CoasterRadio.com that I feel like have been our ideas, and then they've been stolen. This past weekend, we found out that down at Holiday World, my home park, that they've got Thanksgiving, they've got Halloween, they've got 4th of July, and they've got Christmas. They want to build a Happy Birthday Land. That was my idea. Like 12 years ago, I said that was the best new holiday for Holiday World.
And what I love though, EB, is everything we have is like archived. So you can go back and find it. Like
I feel like I can prove that was my idea first.
I love it.
And then with the Glenwood Caverns things, y'all got to be the voices of characters for it.
Oh yeah.
We've made a lot of friends. That's what's so nice is that we've made a lot of friends. And over the past 16 years, we've made friends with like a 16-year-old who found the podcast 16 years ago. And now he's in his 30s and he's working at the park.
Yes. Yep.
Right. And so that's the thing is that we've built this loyalty over the years. And so we have these longtime fans who who find us again. And so, yeah, we've been the voice on a couple of different rides. We've got some rides at Luna Park that we've got the voice on. Mike, you were a voice at Six Flags Mexico City.
Yeah.
We've been voices out in the UK during the haunt season as voices in the midway for the haunt. So it's been so much fun to have the fans reach out to us. I mean, just like you guys have, right? Reach out to us and say, guys, we want to do something for you and let's get you into the parks and do something fun.
And that's kind of, I think, one of the fun things about doing a podcast is that if you're enthusiastic about something, like all of us, everybody on this podcast today is like enthusiastic about this stuff. The people who create this stuff sometimes listen in and be like, well, hey, if they're excited to do a voice for the ride, okay, fine, we'll let them. That's great. And that seems to happen. And what I like is that a lot of the people who are, designers or public relations people or even park presidents or stuff, they listen to these podcasts that we all do because they kind of want to hear like what are the fans saying or what are people who really like saying about my park and about my industry. Like I'm always surprised when I hear that happens, but EB and I've heard that a lot, that you'd be surprised who's listening. They never like write in or call in or anything, but a lot of people who are high up listen to these podcasts to get a good sense of, what everybody's talking about. It's interesting. Yeah.
Okay. So this is a question that I think can be useful for both me and Jack and anybody listening at home. What advice would you give to others who might want to get into podcasting or producing media like this?
Don't. There's too many people. Just listen.
No more. Yeah.
No more people.
And this is like full circle because I remember early on when I was like, we should do a podcast, Chris. And I sent Mike an email. I was like, so how do we even start this thing?
I didn't write don't, right?
No, you did not write don't. You sent me a very nice.
Yeah, good thing you didn't write to me.
Yeah,
He sent me a very nice email giving me a lot of advice, and we did use a lot of it, so we appreciate it for sure.
Oh,
But
sure. Yeah, I think, one of the things, the advice I would have given 16 years ago is different than the advice I'd give now. I think
sure.
Now you sort of have to look at like what everybody is doing and then try to not do the exact same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because that just won't get you recognized by an audience, or won't have an audience, check you out, because they'll be like, well, that sounds like everything else.
It's a lot harder to carve out a niche with how many people are out there right now.
Yeah.
Sure.
So, you sort of have to first make sure that what you're putting out is like a high quality product in terms of like just using good microphones,
Yep,
good editing. And, a lot of people put out podcasts where it's like they talk over each other. There's too many people talking at once. One person's audio is way louder than the other. Just things that are difficult for people to listen to. So that's one thing I would sort of, talk about. But then just coming up with a different spin on how are you going to talk about the same stories that everybody's covering. Like if there's a story about a new roller coaster that's opening, every single podcast is going to talk about it. So how do you do it in a way that's a little bit different than all the others, and I think that's how you start to gain an audience. But the third thing that I would say for anybody trying it is to make sure that you do it regularly, because I think a problem with podcasts is that people start off, really strong and they're really excited, but they don't put out an episode on a regular schedule. And so then people are like, well, wait, I really like that first episode. When can I hear another one? And they don't know when it's going to come, so they don't come back. So that's the other thing I think that EB and I found that's pretty important.
That's good. Yeah.
Yeah, I will say that when me and Jack first hopped into the whole podcast thing, it was right around the pandemic, right when it had first started, and we actually had the time to do it. And then that was one thing that I had made clear at the start was I thought as long as we just post regularly, we can at least gain a little bit of something. And it seemed like once the pandemic started to chill out, a lot of other podcasts started to drop off, which gave us more of an opportunity. And we have actually carved out, some loyal fans and followers. We have a Discord server where we talk to them all the time. I'm surprised at how much it's grown in a year and a half, and I'm very proud of it. But yeah, we jumped in at that time and we stuck to it, and it definitely paid out, I think.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
My other rule, and I know this is something you all agree with, is just have fun with it.
Yes. I think a problem with not so much with podcasters, but like a lot of people who are bloggers, vloggers, or have websites and stuff, they take what they do too seriously, and they take themselves too seriously. I mean, we've seen a lot of that over 16 years, just people who aren't having fun with it. Like we're talking about theme parks and roller coasters and stuff. It's just fun, and like a lot of people just get angry about things, and like, just everybody's got to relax. It's fun, man. Just, we're talking about theme parks.
Well, ultimately, it is a lot of work, right? So Mike and I have always joked about how we do the show first for ourselves.
True.
Right?
Yes.
Because it has to be fun. It has to be fun for us because it is a lot of work.
Yeah.
It's awesome. And this kind of goes hand in hand with that. What's been the most rewarding part, you think, of doing a podcast in the theme park industry?
And this is from our friend Allison.
Yes, this is from our friend Allison.
Oh, great.
I think it goes back to those meetups, Mike. The interactivity with the show has always been around. I think we've always tried to get feedback from the listeners. We've always asked listeners to send us emails and answer questions and things like that. But the ultimate manifestation of that is the listener meetup events where we get to meet up face to face, go to the parks and spend 8 hours, with the listeners. And some of them, they come and they say hi, and then they kind of split off and they do their own thing, and they may come back when we record a show in the park at do a live podcast. But there's always a handful of listeners that are just like, hey, Mike and EB, I want to spend the whole day with you. And those guys are cool too, right? It's fun. It's great.
Sure. I always think of that scene in Good Morning Vietnam, the Robin Williams movie. Remember that scene where he's stuck in like a traffic jam or something, and all these soldiers are around him. And he at that point he was kind of like bummed out about doing his show, but then he actually met all of the soldiers he was doing the show for.
Yeah.
And then he got it. He's like, oh my God, this is who I'm doing it for. when we started doing the meetups, that was kind of like a moment for me because I was like, wait, this is who it is. And so it's I always like think of those meetups when doing the show now because I'm like, okay, these are the folks who, were nice enough to come out to like a event to like see us do a show. And, so that's important. But one of the things that I love most are getting to meet the people who make these rides, and to talk to them. And it's really cool because it kind of changes the way that you experience the parks. Even going way back to like our first season, like talking to Joe Rohde from Disney Imagineering about Animal Kingdom and Expedition Everest. Like that was just cool to hear him just talk for a half hour about like his creative process and what goes on and all the research that they do just for one attraction. And we've had a lot of experiences like that, haven't we, EB? Like just people, from park presidents, park owners, creative people doing rides, all the way down to, the guy sweeping up the park and stuff, who we've talked to. It's fun.
I suppose that the sweet, nice answer is me saying, "Oh, it's all about the listeners, isn't it?" But let's be honest, Mike. It's all about the selfishness and the perks that we get, right? Where we get
some good perks.
We get the cut the line passes, we get the behind the stage tours, we get the dinners out with the park owners. Those sorts of things are actually what's the best part about doing the podcast.
That is cool though. It is cool to have the behind the scenes access, and that's honestly when we started the show. That was one of the like things that I was excited about most. Is oh my gosh, I want to see like underneath the station of a roller coaster, or I want to drive behind the actually, you know what, the best thing ever, I swear to God, this is when I think about Coaster Radio, and the best thing we ever got to do is when we actually got to drive our car through King's Dominion. Like we actually and then like drive into the backstage area and you see like pieces of old rides and stuff and you're like, oh my God, this is what it's all about. Like seeing, oh my God, there's a log flume vehicle over there. Oh, whoa, look at that. Just like all the stuff that's like sitting around backstage. And that's cool. That's really cool because, that's something that just as a fan, you normally don't get to see unless you're.
Well, and I feel like we as a podcast, we've been really cool about that kind of thing. And I think that's something that set us apart throughout the 16 years is that we've always played it really cool because they'll be like, oh, why don't you just come over here and we'll go into the underneath the roller coaster and I'll show you this backstage area. And it's like, okay, sure, we'll go see that. But inside you're like, oh my God, this is the coolest thing ever. Can I touch a wheel? You have to try to not like, that's cool. That's cool. Yeah, sure. Whatever.
Yeah. Like, yeah.
Okay.
I always notice, and I can see that like we're shaking with like excitement of whatever it is that we're seeing, but it's always like, yeah. Oh, cool. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Hey, we've got some old wood here from the coaster that we're tearing down. You can take a piece home. Okay. Yeah, I can take a piece home. That's fine. Cool. Okay.
Yeah. And inside we're like, but, it's like, oh yeah, no, that's cool. Yeah.
I register with that so much. I'll never forget the first time a park it's like, yeah, okay, yeah, you want to go behind the scenes and take pictures? It's like, okay, we can make that happen. And I'm like, awesome, this is great. Yeah, right? And inside I'm like, oh, yay. Or the other one.
It's finally happening.
Yeah, the other one was a couple of weeks ago. I got to meet Fred Grubb.
Yeah.
And I'm standing there and I'm like, oh my God, this is Fred Grubb. It's like he's right here. And it's like, hi Fred, my name's Jack. Thanks. Thanks for paying for the bar tonight and having us out to your facility and all that. And inside I'm like, oh my God, this is Fred Grubb. He's designed all of this.
Exactly, right? Like that's what's awesome about this stuff is that, like how many people have ridden his rides, and like here's the dude who like came up with it and figured out how to make RMC such a huge success and, kind of innovated the industry and stuff like that. That's awesome, man.
No, it's about the listeners.
It's about the listeners. It is always about the listeners.
It does make a difference, though. I mean, let's bring it back to that because it is true that, we look at the numbers and you see that you've got, 1,000 downloads or 5,000 downloads or 10,000 downloads. It doesn't really matter. What matters is I open up the P.O. box. We have a snail mail P.O. box, and I open it up and somebody sends me a postcard and says, hey guys, I went to this park. It was a lot of fun. Love the show. That means so much more to me than seeing 3,000 downloads or whatever it is. You know what I mean? It's great. It's so nice to have that personal touch.
Yeah.
And Jack, you mentioned like you listened with your dad. Like we've heard so many stories.
Yeah, that's great.
Thing. Like, yeah, hey, we listen as a family as we're going down to the park, and that's exactly one of the reasons we started the show is like we wanted people to listen as they were driving to the park.
Oh,
Get
right.
excited about their day. And so when we hear that somebody said like, hey, I had a 2-hour trip down to Busch Gardens, we listened to 2 episodes and it got us really pumped up. That's exactly it. Like that's 100% why we do it is, to get people having fun and to share that type of thing. So,
and it's so much fun too. Cause like I said, so 2018, my dad and I are like, we're going to do this massive road trip. And so we started in Knoxville, Tennessee, and we went up and we hit Kings Island, Cedar Point, Michigan's Adventure, Canada's Wonderland, Knoebels, Dorney Park, Kings Dominion, and Carowinds, all in the span of about 2.5 weeks.
Yeah.
awesome.
And over those 2.5 weeks, I don't think we listened to anything other than Coaster Radio. We started in season 3 and we finished in season 8.
Whoa, that's awesome. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, because that was the whole idea is, do a goofy radio show about theme parks, but, just make it fun and make it accessible to everybody, regardless of if you're never been on a roller coaster or a super, super fan. And one of the things that makes me proudest of the show is that there are people who listen who are like girlfriends of coaster enthusiasts. And they're like, hey, I don't even know what you guys are talking about, but it's fun. So I'll listen too. And, and there are people who like just got started getting into this stuff and they listen. And then there's the person who, hey, I've ridden 800 roller coasters, and even though you guys get some facts wrong,
yeah, you guys get it wrong, but it's okay.
It's okay. I still listen. So, it's cool. That's what's fun about it.
Yeah, we that side of the community, the whole you guys get stuff wrong. We try to avoid some of them. But anyway, we have one more question from me and Jack, and then a couple listener questions. So, 16 years of doing this. Favorite guest you have ever had on the show? And I think it's going to be tough for you to pick one, but if you had to.
What do you think, EB? Because there's been some really good ones. Even in recent years, there's been some like.
Yeah, NPH was fantastic and fun and weird. I mean, right? That's just something that's really cool. But we've had so many different. Who do we? Is it like a park person? Because it's almost like it's these enthusiasts sometimes.
Yeah, that's true. That's
right,
true.
like the guy that the kid that built the wooden roller coaster in Oklahoma.
Oh yeah,
remember him? Jeremy Reed, was that his name?
Yep. Yeah, Jeremy, who built like the Oklahoma Land Run.
Yeah, the wooden roller coaster in his backyard. That was one of those first very famous backyard roller coasters that made it huge on the internet. And we talked to him, and it was just like, "What are you doing? And how is this possible?" That was a really fun one.
I like talking to Will Cook from Holiday World.
Oh, how into his park he was.
Yes.
Yeah.
And just like that was so, because I think that was the first park owner that came on the show and like actually like was brave enough to come on the show, before there are others who were not at that point, but he came on and just was so honest about what it takes to run a park and, really gave some details that other like corporate park owners might not have said. So that was cool.
That was a good one. Yes, for sure.
Yeah. Like having Disney Imagineers on are pretty great. Like that's fun.
Well, was it the Gravity Group that came on and said that they could make a wooden roller coaster go upside down?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Right. So we talked to those guys way back in the day before any wooden roller coaster went upside down, and they were the ones who said they could do it. And years later, they ultimately have done it. And that was really interesting 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah. But, like sometimes you have a guest on, like a guest we had on 2 weeks ago. There's this guy named Jeremy Cruz who runs a small haunted attraction in Alabama called the Territorium. And he bought this dark ride, this old Bill Tracy dark ride that used to be at the Panama City Miracle Strip. And he brought it up to Alabama. And to hear his story and just the excitement and the passion that he has about this little tiny amusement park that he's built is just so cool, right? Because he's just this guy who loves this stuff, and here he is, like trying to make fun for people. And I like guests like that, who are not known. And
well, and it's funny because he's possibly one of the most hardcore amusement park enthusiasts out there.
Yeah,
but probably listens to 0 podcasts.
Yeah, true. Yep. Yeah.
Right. And so to find him and drag him across the lines, that was really cool.
Yeah. But that's another thing that I love about podcasts is a guy like that. you would never hear a 30-minute interview with him anywhere,
No.
except on a podcast like this. So that's what's fun.
And I agree with that. Like finding those guests, it's like, you've got a story to tell. Why don't you come on the show and just talk for 30 minutes, and then 30 minutes turns into an hour sometimes. And
and they're happy to share it because they don't have an outlet for it necessarily anywhere else. It's great.
Yeah. So, that's awesome. I've got another like favorite guest y'all have every year is Arthur Levine. Just those episodes are just crazy to hear like his thoughts on it. As someone who writes about them like for a living. And then we got to talk to Marcus Leshock last week, and hearing stories from him, it's like, you get to talk about this on the news for your day job, and it's just crazy.
He seems like a really cool guy. We've never met him or talked to him, but exchanged a few emails, I think. And just seems like a really, really nice guy who has a cool job, gets to cover this stuff for real. I like to say, even though the podcast is for real, but like
we do it for
TV.
real. They get to do it for real. With
For real,
a check.
Yes.
Yeah.
They get a paycheck for it. So
exactly. There you go.
Yeah, it was good having him on. Okay, so we have a couple of questions from listeners, and then
I dread this next question.
We'll be all good. This is a question that's a little off topic and might seem out of the blue. This is from our friend Grant. He says, opinion on spaghetti.
It shouldn't have chili on top, that's for sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
You actually, I don't know if you want to tell a little behind the scenes, EB, but you got like dragged through the coals on our listener survey when you mentioned Cincinnati chili and how you just
I'm assuming this is what this person is alluding to. I don't know. But in this last season of CoasterRadio.com, I'm in the Midwest, and I'm not too far from Cincinnati. I've been to Skyline Chili, and I've been to Kings Island, where they have a Skyline Chili, and I just don't get. I'm admittedly a Midwest transplant. I'm from the East Coast with Mike, but I came out to the Midwest, and I don't get the Skyline Chili or the Cincinnati Chili where they put it on top of the spaghetti. Cheese, onions, all that's great with chili, but why are y'all putting on top of spaghetti? That doesn't make sense to me.
It's a little weird, but
it doesn't make any sense because we don't necessarily have to like occupy too much time on your podcast about me ranting about Skyline Chili, but spaghetti is the name of the noodle, and then it has a sauce on top. So if you put chili on top of spaghetti, it's still spaghetti. It does not magically become chili.
There you go.
It's like if I took spaghetti and I put tomato sauce on top, the spaghetti doesn't turn into tomato sauce. It's still spaghetti.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. This exact conversation got a lot of people angry. So
yeah,
you guys may get emails too. We'll see.
So Chris, do you want to explain this?
Sure. So one of the big hot takes that we have among our little friend circle is that Jack despises spaghetti. Like in general, he will not eat it. He gets a lot of hate for it. So I guess
you hate all pastas or just spaghetti?
A wider survey.
No, pretty much all of it. Yeah.
Okay, all pastas. Okay.
And so Grant, the person who asked this question, is constantly trying to just get me like roasted over not liking spaghetti. It kind of backfired because he just went off on a huge Skyline tangent, and I know he likes Skyline.
Okay, see,
there you go.
It's all wrapped up together. I'm surprised. No pasta though, right? So
no, I'm not.
The macaroni and cheese. No,
it doesn't like pizza either.
Okay.
Oh. And see now, but that's a lot of what's at the parks: pizza, pasta, spaghetti.
Yeah, it's weird. So, like, I'm lactose intolerant to an extent, so I've never really been able to tolerate cheese.
So the cheese problem. It's not the pasta, maybe. It's the cheese.
Well, that and then textures, and then in general, I just don't like trying things. So the fact that I'm a coaster enthusiast is kind of crazy. But, yeah, this is just one of those things that they love to give me a hard time about.
Okay. That's fair.
Yeah, well, I've never even said this on our own show, but my food thing is I don't want to eat any food with bones in it. I just can't do it. Like so ribs, like chicken wings, anything like that, I can't do it. And I know I could do it if I had to, but like it's one of those things. It's the texture and just something that I avoid.
It's a bit too visceral for you, huh? Reminds you you're a carnivore, apex predator. Mike doesn't want to admit it. Okay.
the turkey legs at the park. Like, no, I don't want anything to do with
I
those.
love
Like,
the
keep
turkey
those away
legs.
from me. Yeah.
Oh man,
I love the turkey legs.
They're tasty though. I mean, I've had
Yeah.
somebody like hand me a piece, and I'm like, okay, good. Just keep keep that thing away from me. Yeah, it's good. I think I'm missing out.
Okay, so another question, and this is for you, Mike. If you could go back and do the American Idol experience again, would you do anything differently? And this is from our friend Perry.
Oh,
you've got to set this up to explain what this is, though, Mike.
yeah. For anybody who doesn't know, so I don't even remember how long ago this was. Was it 10 years ago now?
A while ago, right?
Yeah, that Disney at Disney Hollywood Studios has a big theater there, and they created the American Idol experience, where essentially they recreated the American Idol live stage that you see on television in this theater, and they make guests come in and audition, and actually go through an entire process to get onto the show. There were like 7 shows a day, 3 singers per show, and they would audition people in the park to fill these different roles. And so again, just like the NPH project, like trying to find content to do on the show that was interesting, that we could talk about over a season, I decided that I needed a win in my life. I wanted something like where I could say, I'm going to go after something and win and do my best and try to, the goal was I'm going to get on that stage and sing a song, even though like from what I'd been seeing, it was all teenagers and people in their 20s. I was like, no, I'm going to make it on that stage, and I'm going to try to win and see what I can do. So I even went so far as to like research the song list and go on YouTube and find what people were singing.
We had like a voice coach come on as a guest of the podcast. We're a theme park and roller coaster podcast, and all of a sudden Mike's getting voice lessons.
Yeah, from like a Broadway.
What is that?
Remember the guy from London who was on like the West End, like he was a conductor or a vocal coach there, and he was giving vocal lessons. There was all the stuff that we did. And so I went down to Disney and I went and auditioned, and it was terrifying to go through and like have to sing in all these different rooms. But I made it through and made it on to the show. And I think I did okay. But there was this girl who was singing in our group who was like 10 times better than me and the other guy who were on there. And she won. But it was still a cool experience to get onto the stage. But I think if I could do anything differently, I wouldn't have stayed up so late the night before. We had stayed up late at Epcot, and then we went down to downtown Disney and stuff. And so when I got up early the next morning, I could tell that like my throat was a little fried just from being tired. And I know that because when I sang on the American Idol experience, my voice cracked on the high note. Like, and it normally wouldn't have done that because in all my rehearsals and even in the rehearsals, like the before that we did on the stage, it didn't do that. But I could tell I was getting tired. And I really believe that I could have had a chance to win if my voice didn't crack at the end, because I was like kind of nailing it. And even what I found out later from one of the hosts is that the spot that I was put in is the spot that they put for the person they want to win. I was the third person. And they said that's your spot. That's where they put like the singer who they think is going to win. But I cracked and made a really bad like honking sound at the end.
What song did you sing, Mike? What song did you choose?
Sway by Dean Martin originally, but Michael Bublé's. But that's like one of the only songs on that list that they did that fit my voice, because I have kind of a deeper voice. So I should have like done what singers do and gone to bed early. But I was at Disney too. I wasn't going to.
All right.
So I can go on the American Idol experience.
Chris, maybe we need to send you on that.
No, and it doesn't even exist anymore, buddy.
I know, that's the bummer. It's not there anymore even. But it was such a weird experience, and just how they did it so much like the show, and they had all the cameras and the lighting. I remember the coolest thing that they had, and this is me as like a techie person that I like this. They put this thing on the back of my shirt. It was like a transmitter, and wherever I walked on the stage, the spotlights would follow. So it was like on the stage, it was all motorized lighting, and it would just the lights would sway wherever I walked, and it was really cool. Like that was just a neat thing.
Awesome.
Some of that behind the scenes, cool.
Yeah, really neat.
Okay. So we also have a question specifically for EB from Perry. Besides having killer cats and wasting food at parks, what's the most controversial thing you've done according to your fans? This is Perry, not me. Blame him.
Yeah, those are two pretty good things for sure. I don't know. Did I tell any stories about like stealing stuff from the park, Mike? That seems like something I would do. I don't know.
I don't recall you ever stealing anything.
That seems like something I would do. I have no idea. Controversial things. Those. I've been getting edgier. I feel like trying to push the buttons and push the envelope on folks. Big Boy was a character that we did.
Oh, Big Boy.
That was kind of controversial. We've had a couple of controversial characters.
How long has it been since he made an appearance?
Yeah, Big Boy's been he has not shown up lately, but Big Boy, and again, this is something that recent listeners of the podcast hear Big Boy, but they don't get that Big Boy is based on the fact that B&M designed seats called Big Boy seats.
Yes,
like they were called Big Boy seats.
Yeah.
We didn't come up with that. That was them. And so we were like, why did they build Big Boy seats? Well, for the Big Boy to go sit in them. And so we had the Big Boy come, and he has to come up the stairs. And he's out of breath. And people, oh my gosh, that was, I think, one of the worst characters that we ever did. People hated that.
I like though that the Big Boy voice like was out of breath even just standing. Like you'd be like, okay, I think I'm okay now.
I'm ready. I'm here at the station now to get in my Big Boy seat. I've had chili on top of spaghetti. It's just spaghetti.
What are they doing to me?
It's the best.
Yeah,
the Big Boy.
But you know what I liked is, so we did the Big Boy character, and people got angry, and we got all these letters saying, what you're making fun, and all. So then we had this idea. Well, we could keep doing the Big Boy character, but we'll have him come on and celebrate how he lost all his weight.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
But the ironic thing was he was still out of breath. And so, like, we still were able to do the voice. He was still out of breath, though. It was just, but he had lost 300 pounds and, was healthy. And so that was funny. I think it might be safe to do. What we were talking about? There was that story in the news about the guy who, it was covered everywhere. The guy who ate at Six Flags every day.
Yeah.
People were texting that to me. I was like, I've seen this a million times already.
Yep.
So we said that's the perfect way to bring Big Boy back, because he could be like, I've been doing that for 10 years. I don't know where this guy's been.
Right. This is my whole thing. Right. Every 90 minutes, I'm eating a meal.
Yeah. We might have to do that this week, EB. That might be the time to bring that out.
That'd be good. Yeah, sure.
We've kind of just gone full circle here with characters, because there's just so many of them that just, you pretty much have a character for anything that happens. Mark Shapiro, the Tower of Terrorists, they just you've got something for like everything. And it's like you say, they offend someone. You're always going to offend someone with a character, but they're hilarious.
Well, and they all come out of real experiences and real news stories, right? This is the funny thing, is that, again, with modern listeners of the show, they might not even remember Mark Shapiro from 2006. Right. Or the fact that there really was a guy outside of the Tower of Terror who got pepper sprayed. That's a real thing that happened, and it was just a joke, but it it stayed alive in the podcast, and so they keep coming back. And again, this is something that listeners might not get. Longtime listeners probably, they like the callback, but it's just funny for me and Mike.
Oh yeah.
Right. That's really what it comes down to.
One of my favorite characters that EB ever did was the Disney podcast guy.
Oh,
and I love that character so much because, like, my favorite segment that he ever did was where at Magic Kingdom they had just unveiled like this area of the park that was themed after Tangled, and all that were there was like toilets, like there was a restroom, and all of these Disney bloggers showed up and they're like videotaping the bathroom, and I was like, what? Why? Why is this exciting? Why do people want to know about this? Why are there like 20 Disney bloggers all there with their cameras? So EB did this beautiful thing where we added a little echo to his voice, and like he was in the bathroom,
in the stalls, right? Sure.
in the stalls podcasting, and we just had nothing but toilet sound effects, like flushing, flushing, flushing. And EB had written this beautiful script, like with all these bathroom puns, and I hadn't heard it before we started recording, and I was like crying, like pounding my fist on the table. I was laughing so hard at it, but that was one of my favorite. But it was one of those things that just was born out of sometimes the ridiculousness of what goes on in the theme park world, and that all these people were excited about tangled toilets, and that was my favorite.
The tangled toilets, yes, I remember.
Yeah,
Oh, that's
so good.
great. Okay.
If anybody wants to hear that, by the way, that's on at the Coaster Radio website. If you go into the characters section, Disney podcast guy, it's the clip.
He's got his own right. He's got his own page there on the coasterradio.com website.
That's great.
You can go and listen to that. Yeah, it's one of my favorite Coaster Radio segments ever.
Yeah, I've got the character page pulled up, and there's some gold on here. I think my favorite character segment ever is C-Pain's Summer Anthem 2000. Was it 11?
Oh, yes, yeah. That was a highly produced song, and we used the Coaster Radio theme, and then just like C-Pain rapped over it or whatever about ridiculous lyrics about making out with girls. It was just like so dumb. So it was like something that a 13-year-old would write.
Oh,
but I'm
sure.
That's just the goofy part about it. Like something that a 12-year-old would write, but.
Or an 11-year-old, 10, maybe 9.
Yeah, exactly. Right, yeah.
Keep going down.
Again, I just remember my dad and I are driving, and all of a sudden this pops up between two episodes. And I think we did end up pulling off the interstate. We were laughing so hard.
Yeah, so goofy. Yeah, and like just all the sound effects in there and stuff. But again, like EB said it perfectly. Like that's one of the reasons we do the shows, because it's fun for us. And so we always hope that, okay, if it's making us laugh, maybe it's making somebody else laugh too. So.
Right.
And that's definitely those C-Pain songs just make me laugh. It's so dumb and goofy. But
Yeah. Okay. So we've gotten through everything we really wanted to talk about. We just have our last 2 questions that we ask every single person who comes on the show. And that is, the basic favorite theme park and favorite roller coaster.
Ooh. You want to go first, DB?
No, but I will. Favorite theme park. See, I want to say Holiday World, my home park, but it probably is more accurately Dollywood is probably my favorite park.
Yeah. Just
because it has the right combination, I feel like, of being a park that has a nice collection of rides, but the theming, the friendliness, the terrain, everything about it. I love Dollywood. And other parks have aspects of Dollywood, right? Like Knoebels has that in the woods kind of a feel. Any number of parks have the great roller coaster collection. Silver Dollar City, of course, has the same sort of attitude of the friendliness and the niceness. Holiday World is clean and pretty. But Dollywood has everything, I feel like. So that's going to be my favorite park.
I like that answer. That's my home park. So.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Favorite roller coaster is really tricky. We talk about this on the podcast all the time. And I mean, any coaster enthusiast knows that there's so many different roller coasters out there, right? So, do you say Fury 325? Well, sure, that could be my favorite roller coaster, but go back to my old school favorite, the Toboggan. There's only like 2 of them left in the whole country. Yeah, and it's just so stupid and fun and ridiculous. And there's nothing better than a roller coaster like that. And then there's, the great wooden roller coasters like the Voyage at Holiday World. I mean, that's just great. So much fun.
Yeah. For me, I'm in the same boat. I love places like Knoebels. I love places like Dollywood. I had so much fun at Dollywood. I love Silver Dollar City. That's another one, a recent one that, thank God for the meetup that got us there, because I don't think I probably would have visited if not for that. I loved Magic Mountain. Like that, being from the East Coast, the Magic Mountain was kind of this holy grail.
Right? That's the pilgrimage, right? Sure.
Yeah. And even though a lot of people who are from Los Angeles, they're like, oh, Magic Mountain sucks. But like, to me, I was like, oh my God, all these rides I've always wanted to.
It's such a great park.
Well, in all of these scenes and all of these sites that I've seen in movies and films, right? It was so much fun to go to Magic Mountain.
Yeah. Like people like totally like rail on X2, But I was like, this is
X2
the
is
weirdest roller
great.
coaster I've ever been on. I love it. It's great. Now, I don't know if I
Sure.
rode it 10 more times, if I'd be like, oh, okay, maybe.
Well,
this is what
and
people think.
Tatsu, I mean, we've been on flying coasters before, but that was the best flying
Oh, the
coaster. So
best
even
one.
though flying coasters all suck, that was
Yeah.
the best of them all.
But for me, in terms of best theme park, my favorite theme park is Disneyland, just because of what it is.
Oh,
and
sure, fine.
I love Disneyland.
Of
man.
course.
And I love, like, the best thing in the world is EB and I did this one day where you can get to the park some days at 8 a.m. and stay till midnight. And it's just this huge long day, but there's so much to see and do. And, you can kind of like experience some like old school rides, but then new stuff like Indiana Jones.
mhm.
Yeah, just really cool. But then my favorite, I
Didn't
know
y'all do that with Galaxy's Edge, an 8 to 12 day?
Yes. Yeah, we
So-
did that.
Mhm.
Yep. It was
Fun
a
story.
super early.
I walked right past you. I was like, wait, was that Mike and EB? Because we were there that day.
That same day? Oh, that's
Oh,
great.
Yes.
Oh, that would have been fun to say hi. Yeah. So that was one of those days. That was a huge long day. With that's when they were doing that timed entry to Galaxy's Edge. Where you get
Oh,
4
it
hours.
was so
there. Oh, yeah.
wonderful. We
Yeah.
did the 8 to midnight slot that night. My dad and I were like,
Nice.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. We got to see the tail end of it. Tail end of our time was when it was dark, just getting dark. So we got to see a little bit of it at night. It was really, really amazing. But yeah, my favorite roller coaster, I take some heat for this sometimes, but it's Apollo's Chariot at Busch Gardens.
You still
Williamsburg.
love Apollo's Chariot.
I love it. I like nothing has ever unseated that for me just because I love what it is. It's just so simple. And I love that like the different drops change. Like you go on a drop that's like 15 feet and then the next one is 50. It's like there's all these different variances of heights and stuff. And I just love it. I know they're better. Like Fury is definitely a better roller coaster, but that's my
favorite roller coaster is very personal, right? That's fine.
Sure. I think it is. I think there are better roller coasters than Apollo's Chariot, but for me, that's like what I need to get on every summer to make it complete.
Yep.
And that's why in like the COVID year, I was shocked. Like, of course, like 2020 was the first year since 1999 that I did not get to ride Apollo's Chariot, even though I got on the ride and it broke down on the lift hill.
Oh,
Not even high up on the lift hill. Yeah, I was like one step up on the hill. So
right, barely got out of the station, right?
Yeah, I
didn't even get to do like a full walk.
Yeah. No, I was in the back seat and like only got like to hop off and one step down. So yeah, I was like, that's why 2020 sucked. Like I got on Apollo's Chariot but did not get to ride it. So
that's
bad year. But I love that ride.
That's awesome. Well, Mike and EB, thank you so much for coming on and talking to us. I mean, this has been a blast for us. Tell people where they can find you so they can listen to your show and see more of what y'all do.
Oh, thanks. EB, you do the good elevator pitch. I always like your elevator pitch for this.
All right. Well, the podcast, the name of the show is the name of the site. That's what we like to say, coasterradio.com. So you can go to coasterradio.com. You can find the weekly coasterradio.com podcast. But we also have, and we didn't even mention this, I think, in the whole hour that we've been talking, Theme Park News from coasterradio.com is a totally separate daily podcast that we have. It's just a couple of minutes long, and it's a news podcast. You can listen to it as a traditional podcast wherever you find podcasts, but you can also set it up as a part of your flash briefing or your daily news update on a smart speaker device. So that's Theme Park News from coasterradio.com. And that and the hour-long weekly podcast, coasterradio.com, they're both at the website, coasterradio.com.
Yeah, and what's really great about it is the archive is there. So, we were talking about shows that we did, 10, 15 years ago. They're all there. So it's kind of fun to go back. There are people who, I always love hearing about this, but there are people who go back and listen from episode 1 all the way to like 625 that we're up to right now. So, and it's fun just to hear the show evolve over that time. And like we talked about at the beginning, it's fun to hear technology evolve too. You hear us talking about technology that doesn't exist anymore, back 15 years ago. Like we talk about, what is it? The Frapper map we used to use?
We had the Frapper map was a website that we used, but we also talk about the technology like the Qbot, and we talk about, you have to go and find the go to the website to download the podcast and all sorts of crazy things that we were talking about back in the day. And speaking of the technology, the easiest way I think to get the coasterradio.com podcast now, this is just in the last year or so, we have a coasterradio.com app For Apple device users, you can go to the store and you can find the coasterradio.com app. It not only has the coasterradio.com podcast feed, it also has Theme Park News as a podcast feed, as well as interactivity, where you can send in photos and trip reports to coasterradio.com, plus that entire coasterradio.com backlog of episodes going all the way back to 2005. So the coasterradio.com app is available too.
That's awesome. I got to shout him out. I think you all saw it on Twitter the other day. Coaster365 tweeted the video of him scrolling through every episode that he's listened to.
Yes, absolutely. Yep.
His name is Brian, and he's one of our really good friends. So I got to shout him out because he was like, I'm going to listen to all of Coaster Radio. I was like, you've got a lot of stuff ahead of you.
It's literally months of content.
Yes.
Is how many podcasts episodes of coasterradio.com out there right now is months of content.
Yeah. And he was the one who reminded us that we said last year, for people who have done that, there should be like some type of special club with a membership card.
Or we like send them a pin. There should be something, right?
Yeah, you should get something for that. I think we should create pins. That's a good idea. With like numbers on the back.
Face
like,
tattoos.
A branding. We'll get a brand. Like
oh my gosh. Right there. At the next meetup, that's what we'll do.
Yeah, line up at the meetup, have your podcast feed.
That's right. We'll have the grill fired up in the picnic pavilion. We'll have the hot dogs going, but we'll also have the brand, cooking down there in the charcoal. Cedar Point cops roll up. What are you guys doing? Just branding our listeners. No biggie. It's fine.
A big CR.
You guys said we could do it.
That's right. We talked about this.
Tony Clark said it was okay. Just let it. Yeah.
Oh.
Well, awesome. Well, thank you all so much. We'll go ahead and wrap it up here. Next week, if all goes to plan, we've got Taylor, Scott, and Sarah from Coaster Studios and Upstop Media to talk about This Is How We Roll. So that's the plan for next week's show, assuming I can get one of them to answer their phone for once. And other than that, if you're not already joined the Discord, the link is down in the description. If you want to join our Patreon, the link is down there as well. Buy Allison's book so she will continue to write the sequel so I don't have to kill her. And other than that, thank you all so much for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening to the Twisted Travelers Podcast.